Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight in the second installment of Ontario Soccer's Grassroots webinar series. Tonight we have Matt Young with us, who is going to lead us through a reshaping of what the player development process can really look like and how to actually operationalize that through what we're calling the 5 Cs. We were fortunate enough to have Matt present recently at the Ontario Soccer Summit, and we're looking forward to hearing how that session can be really brought to life directly into your own environment, specifically with player development from here, and how Ontario Soccer and Matt Young's group at For Quality Sport can actually help you through that process going forward. Without any further ado, I'll hand over the microphone to Matt Young.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt. Welcome, everybody. Thanks so much for giving us your time this evening. This is a really important discussion and topic, and how we like to work is, if you have any questions, put them in the chat box, and then Matt or one of the crew will just interrupt as we go along. This is designed to be interactive. For those that were at the summit, you know that I don't like to lecture because that doesn't assure that you get your point across. And again, it can be healthy debate. If it gets too contentious, then we can take it offline. But the idea here is to give you value, and we don't know if you're getting value and having all your questions answered if you don't ask the questions. So without further ado, for those who were on the first webinar with Cody Royal, excellent coach, developer, excellent speaker, great book. If you haven't got his book, grab the book. One of the things that he talked about was knowing your why, and knowing your why as a coach. And it doesn't matter if you're on this webinar as a coach or as a executive director, a technical director, a parent, somebody that's interested. Those adjectives are all interchangeable for leadership. So we can just think about it in the lens of leadership and what you can do and what you have control over as we go through some of the topics that we're going to go through today. So Cody talked about, why are you coaching? And is it to serve others? Is it to maybe climb the ladder and accelerate? Or is it to fill a vacancy because there was nobody else to coach the kids? It doesn't matter what your why is, but it does matter that we have an obligation once we show up and we commit to giving our knowledge of others. There's the saying that's just because we're volunteers doesn't give us license to suck at what we do. That's not meant to be an offensive. That's meant to be motivational in terms of if we're executive directors and technical directors and coaches, it's really incumbent on us, if we take that responsibility, to know what that responsibility is. So when we start this conversation about reimagining player development, let's again start with the why. So first of all, why would we even think about reframing player development? And before I even get to that question, for those who might not know, and I won't just assume that everybody knows, long-term player development, long-term athlete development is basically a construct, and it was developed in Canada, and it was really developed to put some guardrails around training at different ages and stages. I think it's important because if we know there's a lot of different pathways to get to high performance and to get to that elite or top levels of sport, it isn't a one size fits all. You can have that prodigy that we seem to like to hook our wagon to and claim that was developed here, even though they probably would have developed themselves anywhere, because basically the statistics tell us, what constitutes high performing players. But anyway, we have to start with, why are we reframing that whole process now in 2023? And if I had a chat box, I would ask all of you to put some ideas in. So I don't have any visibility to it, but maybe you can put some ideas in, and I'll give 30 seconds. Why now in 2023 is it a good time to look at how we're reframing the athlete development process? I'll give you 30 seconds. If you've got some ideas, put them in the chat box. And then Matt, maybe you or Alex can read off some of those for us. Just 15 more seconds.
We're getting a few coming out right now.
Perfect. Yeah, just read a couple, Matt.
So we've got needs to be more inclusive organizations. We've got dropout rates post-pandemic, merging research, possibly inclusivity as well. Sport is forever evolving, so we have to as well. As another comment, interest in Canada soccer has never been higher. So there's also a focus on other development models around the world.
Yeah, like those, all great answers. And again, this is a safe space for answers. There is no wrong answers. There's going to be no critiques on any answers that are given. But really, the one that we should take into consideration is coming out of the pandemic and why reframe and where we are in terms of development of young people. So when we talk about the smartphone generation that we're dealing with, we can see, and this was taken in 2017. If we look at all the pillars here, not hanging out with friends, in no rush to drive, less dating, less sex, more likely to feel lonely, less likely to get enough sleep. These are all factors that we have to deal with. We're not sitting here smashing kids on phones because they are on phones, and we're not going to change that. It is what it is, but how then does that affect us at the coaching level, at the club level, at a registration level, et cetera? And I really like the comment that somebody made, let's turn it into a positive. Interest in soccer has never been higher. So how do we take this, what's coming into us, and really reframe that? So our outcome goals from today are just that. For those who are at the summit, you'll know that we always like to start with outcome goals. We're going to revisit them at the end of the session. Some of the outcome goals are to share the tenets of quality sport, explore player-centric development, and really define the 5 C's and how to activate them in your sessions as a coach, in your organization as a club, etc. So those are the outcome goals. So make sure as we're going through, because at the end, we really want to make this about you. So we're going to ask you, what's one of the things that you learned and one of your takeaways when we get to the end? So tenets of a quality sport operating system. We learned this through our interaction with the PGA of America, and we thought this was just brilliant. So we were invited to support them on their player development, redefining their player development pathway about 3 years ago. And obviously, any sport organization, any club, not-for-profit, for-profit, academy, any coach, our main responsibility is over there on the left-hand side: attract, retain, and grow the membership. Often we do a great job on the attracting side, get more people in. Not so good on the retention side in terms of lack of communication or just lack of value, providing lack of value, and that obviously affects the growth of the membership. So the 4 key tenets of quality sport are: number 1, organizational alignment. Organizational alignment, easily said, we can look at it from, is what's happening at Canada Soccer and what Canada Soccer wants showing up in our communities? And is it consistent through NSO, National Sport Organization, Provincial Sport Organization, and then local sport organization? Or we can look at organizational alignment even on a macro level. Is our mission, vision, and values, our why, being reflected in what we're seeing in coaching sessions, in what we're seeing in games, and what we're seeing in practices? So that organizational alignment, we don't have to wait for the NSO, PSO, LSO to get themselves aligned. We can start in our own club, in our own space, on our own team. It can be as macro as, do the parents of the team I'm coaching and players understand what our vision is for the year, our mission, etc. So that's the organizational alignment, and that's tenet number 1. If we don't have that, we've got nothing. And we talked about that extensively. If you were at the Soccer Summit, you would have heard it repeated through Herdman's speech on how he really developed the culture, with Alison Forsyth's speech, and with all the everyone touched on culture, because if we haven't got a good culture, if that's not established out of the gates, we got trouble. Second tenet is discipline project management. And this is, who is going to be the champion that champions some of the things that we're talking about consistently? It's like, I'll give an example of a story. We thought we were super cool going to the NHL when we were asked to come and support some of the things and learn. And we went, and they had 1 hour meeting after 1 hour meeting after 1 hour meeting. But the problem was we didn't connect with, or they didn't have somebody that was on the inside that was taking the information that we were sharing and activating it and actioning it. So if there's not that discipline project management, if we're not going to go back and dedicate somebody to implementing some of the things that we're going to discuss today, then it goes into the great tool graveyard. And I'm sure all of us have experience with great tools and initiatives that have just sat dormant or have not been utilized fully. Third tenet is stakeholder connectivity. And if we look at the stakeholders that are in sport, we've got the player, the parent, the coach, the officials, and the administrators. And in there, I would also say educators, whether that's teaching, whether that's strength and conditioning, whatever. Generalizing here, we don't do a good job of integrating and connecting all of those stakeholders. We usually address people and stakeholders in intellectual silos, if we address them at all. And I say that because it's very rare that we address and bring the players who are the main consumer into their development process. And we're going to talk about some ways of how to do that today. And then the last is the integrated operating environment. So how do 1, 2, and 3 work together instead of working at different systems and you got to go here for that and here for that and here for that? How can they all come together? And we're going to share some really good tools that Matt and his team are going to have available to you to demystify, simplify a lot of the things that we're going to talk about today. So I do want to preface that at the outset. A lot of these things are in play and coming. So if you have questions about, hey, how do I get my hands on that? Or I heard 1 or 2 things that really resonated with me. When will we be getting that? You can bombard Matt. I'll send you his phone number at the end, and you can just bombard him all day and night. Understand that this whole thing is a behavior change process. Okay, that's the way we've always done things. Usually we have a lot of parents who've played and had success. So basically the car ride home is all about their journey being relived through their kids' journey. And we know that from the outset, because of what we've just discussed, that's not a really good plan. And in our breakout session at the Ontario Soccer Summit, we really got into engaging the stakeholders in this process to elevate the experience for all of them. So starting at the club development level with culture, how does that feed into operations, reporting, and execution? And those were the steps below the stakeholder engagement. So there's surveys. Our process is surveys, workshops, interpreting the data, use that to inform the strategic plan, and then communicate. So coming out of that session, if there are technical directors or executive directors that were in our session, we've had really good responses, and we've already started working with quite a few clubs across Ontario to help them support this behavior change process. And again, that's all about the discipline project management that we talked about as tenet number 2. So if there's any questions, Matt, that come through, just interrupt me at any time. If not, we keep going. I'll take that as a keep going. Perfect. We talked about this at the summit, what players value most. And this is important because we're talking about reframing development. So for those that are there, sorry you have to hear it twice, but it's good to always get the repeated repetition. So Mannix and Visick studied this and reported that what the players value the most. These are some of the things in their top 10: fun, friends, fair play, friendly competition, finish the season with better skills than they started. Very rarely do kids say, I want to develop at younger ages. They want to have fun. They want to be with their friends. So what we have to take into consideration as coaches, as technical directors, as executive directors is, how are we setting the table for this to happen? How are we setting the table for that connectivity, that fun, the friendly competition, and most importantly, what are we doing in terms of development? When we get to the parents, we had our partners at A Better Way ask what parents value most, and some of the values were safety, fair play, opportunity, competition, and of course, again, that word development. So we can see that, and that's pretty understandable. A lot of parents will say development, even though I'm pretty sure they might not know what that means. And we told some stories around that at the Ontario Soccer Summit that articulated that well. And even coaches. So what do coaches value the most? Player respect, parent respect, club support, mentorship, and continuing education or development. So we've heard the one consistent through player, parent, and coaches is that word development. And when we talk about redefining success and reframing success, we've got to move away from the benchmark or the marker of development being the standings, the score, and the schedule, and we've got to move towards it being finishing the season better than one started across a mutually agreed upon development criterion. I just want to say that again. We're going to talk about it in terms of finishing the season better than one started across a mutually agreed upon development criterion. That doesn't just go for the players. So if we're coaches, that goes for ourselves. If we're technical directors, that goes for ourselves. If we're executive directors, how are we leveling up? It doesn't matter that we're just volunteers. How are we taking that next step in redefining our success? If we're a club, what does that mean? Attract, retain, and growth metrics. What are our mission and vision? Where are we against that? So again, there's a lot of things and tools and supports that we're going to be making available to you, and Matt and his team are going to be making available to you. So again, I encourage you to ask if something that we talk about today jumps out. So I just want to stop there and just give a little time on this slide. You know, Matt, you and your team, any comments on this and or any questions that some of the other participants might have around changing the mindset from development being the standing score and the schedule to these mutually agreed upon development criterion? No wrong answers.
No comments or questions yet coming through, but we're holding off here.
Okay, perfect. Anything from you guys on this?
Got a comment coming in from Joe saying it might be a bit of a tough sell to redefine development.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks, Joe, for that comment. And you're right, because this is the way we've always done it. And this is why I stopped and asked the question. So a lot of the, how do we do that? So we're going to get into that, but really this is important because we've really got to, here's the easiest way to explain this. If we're only judging the standings, the score, and the schedule as our benchmark for development, I mean, what happens if we have a team that we're leveling up into a higher level of competition? That doesn't tell us that we're getting better or not. What happens if every coach says, well, we're going to win the league every year and we've got 100 teams? Then there's one winner and 99 losers. You know, and what happens when we're managing parent expectations and coach expectations? Well, we're not winning. So Joe's right. I mean, let's address it, because that is, someone could be sitting on the other side, and I used to, and sit there and say, well, there's just no way that we're going to get that to fly, because this is the way it's always been. I can assure you, in terms of coaching and introducing some of the concepts that we're going to share with you, we had no pushback eventually. And we did this across multiple sports: soccer, hockey, toughest one of them all, lacrosse, football, high school football, flag football. It really is a exercise in communication. And for those that say, well, this is going to be more work and more time, number one, I would suggest that this is what we're supposed to be doing as coaches, TDs and EDs. And then number two, it's way less time than actually being on a call every single week, having to listen to parents or someone complaining or kids moving, or I want to switch over there because they're going over there, etc. So before we just naysay it, and I know people have, give it a try. And if you need help, that's why we're here to support that. So again, redefining that success. And we talked about this. Yep.
Just a question from Dermot here. So how do you go about measuring quote development criterion, especially with younger players who just want to have fun?
Great question. We're going to get to that. Yeah, we're going to get to that. So we serve this as a reminder at the Soccer Summit, kind of what we currently serve. Again, this is generalization. There are clubs, and I was reminded of this offline after we presented this at the summit. There are clubs that are doing a good job in measuring things, but currently, generally in sport, we are good at the swag, the showcases, the team snap, the tournaments, the promise, the celebrity coach, but we're serving protein-less burgers. I'm not going to say meatless burgers. I'm going to say protein-less burgers. That's not what our parents, players, kids, and coaches want, because they've told us that. So we have to wrap our heads around the fact that we are in a service business. Those are our consumers, and we need to do a better job at starting to migrate towards those consumers' wants and needs. So hopefully somebody will take this and remember that, and just think about that and have it in the back of your head when you're planning either your sessions or when you're doing coach development, if you're a TD, or when you're an executive director, making sure that we're really dialing into and servicing and giving what the consumer wants when we're talking about reframing development. Segue, the 5 C's. So if you're going off of the Canadian Athlete Development Matrix, they've got 4 pillars. And those pillars are obviously the physical and technical tactical, the psychological, the social emotional, and then they are kind of a lifestyle pillar. If you're going off of the United States Quality Coach Framework in 2018, developed by Dr. Wade Gilbert, who is from Ottawa, now in Fresno State, he coined it the 5 C's. And the reason why he called it the 5 C's is because it was just simpler to actually wrap your head around and have everyone on the same page. So when we talk about competence, what we're talking about is the physical and technical tactical competence. When we talk about confidence, we talk about the mental psychological. When we talk about character, we're talking about leadership. When we talk about connection, that's social emotional. And when we talk about culture, that's the team and the organization. None of this happens without that culture in terms of player development. So these are what you're going to hear, the 5 C's. Happy to report that a lot of organizations, you're going to see this more, and you're going to see this not just in soccer. You're going to start seeing it in tennis. We're working with Tennis Canada to revamp their whole long-term athlete development program. It's called the Whole Player Development Pathway, and it is based on the 5 C's. You're going to see it in golf. You're going to start to see this come across your table. So great that you're getting the first kick at the can and seeing it. This is player development. And essentially, it's not just for players because it applies to everybody. So in the tools and resources that we've provided, that Matt and his team will be providing, you'll see player development, parent development, officials development, and coach development. And they're all using the same language, again, trying to take something that's complex and theoretical and baking it down into an operationalizational framework, if that's a word. Any questions on this before I fly through, again, from the Ontario soccer team or anybody else?
There's just been a couple of comments about this being a bit of a tough sell in the environment. So Joe said, I agree we need a different standard, but a bit of a tough sell in an environment where clubs sell winning versus development. And Davey followed up saying the only team that we need to focus on winning should be the national team.
100%. Couldn't agree more. And I couldn't agree more with both of those statements. And it is the race to the bottom, which we're seeing right now. Everyone's leaving because they want to be involved in the club that's winning. A couple stories that we'll share. When we've gone into academy settings, and doesn't matter what sport, we won't say, we asked what are we getting? Like, what's your player development pathway? Oh, yeah, no, we're all about that. We have them here 6 days a week. They have a nutritionist that comes in. We have everything there. And I go, okay, but that's great. But if we want to use the word development, which a lot of clubs do, what are you baselining them on? And tell me what you're baselining. Oh, well, we don't do that. That's the coaches. They do that. I go, okay, but do the players and parents get a report of what they're doing, where they started, and then are they reevaluated mid-season, and then are they reevaluated at the end of the season? And I promise everyone on this call, if you do that, and it doesn't matter what criterion you pick, if you take the time to evaluate your players at the beginning of the season across whatever criterion you want, across whatever criterion aligns with your club values, and then you reevaluate them mid-season and end of season, you're going to have happier people than not. Because they don't need to leave to go to an academy, because you're showing them the progress right there, and they're getting everything else that they want right in one spot. So to Joe's point, it's really good, and that's exactly why we have this conversation. Now, does it happen overnight? No. We're in the era of quick fix. I want it now. Give me the win, and I don't care about that. That all sounds great, but I really want to win. If that is your game, then that's your game. You chase that game. There are going to be a handful, quite a few players, as a matter of fact, 95% of the players that want to come and have a good experience, that largely get ignored because they're not the high performance or elite, but they just want to have a really great time. it's time for us to shift again, and that's why we're talking about this, to really serve them, because it's their membership fees that are going to serve the 2 to 5% as well. So why not focus on them than trying to chase down that elusive and elite kind of 2 to 5%? And I'm not anti-elite. I do agree that there is an opportunity and people should be able to go and do what they want there. So it does apply to everybody. So in terms of some of the tools and resources that Matt and his team are going to be providing, let's talk about activating the 5 C's. So the first thing that we've done is broken down how to activate confidence in practice and competition. You're going to have access to these downloads, and it's going to give you 30 to 50 different examples of what you can do to activate confidence in practice and competition. The idea isn't, as a coach, that you do all 30 every practice. The idea is that you have exposure to that, you add what you're doing to that, and that repertoire of tools, and that tool just keeps getting more powerful and grows. And same thing with character. So we've gone through culture, competence, character, connection, and confidence. You'll have access to all of those downloads to use at your leisure in your practice and games. Pre and post session checklists. So one of the questions that I asked Dave was, do you have anything for your coaches at the national level? Do you give any of your coaches 10 questions, pre-session checklist to new coaches, even experienced coaches? Has time been allocated to planning for practice? Does the practice have a defined purpose or theme? What is the purpose or theme? Have safety checks? Has it been communicated with others? Is there something set up for when they arrive? Is the practice game-based? As particularly for new coaches, and I don't mean to be offensive to veteran coaches who might have this already done in their head. This is better for new coaches and grassroots coaches than nothing, than currently what we're doing. It's better than coaches just showing up and flying blind, or showing up and just copy pasting a lesson plan for technical tactical that they got offline. And again, we're really trying to bake in the 5 C's into this, and we'll show you how to do that. And there's really good practice and efficacy around some of the things putting there. If you want to do a post-session checklist, you can. Ideally, eventually this all will get incorporated into an app that the coach can use. And what we did was we just shared this with people. So we just shared, hey, this is what's happening today at practice. So the parents got it, the kids got it, and every time we had a practice, because we had to do it ourselves, we just shared it with them anyway. And what that did was that brought them along and engaged them in the development process, because it said, this is what we're doing, and this is why we're doing it, and this is what you can do on your own or at home to help yourself. And the same thing with post-session checklist, really a reflection for coaches. So those are 2 tools that exist for you. In terms of assessing the 5 C's, and this is big because I hope everyone's sitting there going, well, how the hell do you assess character and confidence? What we did was we used the sports psychologists and sports scientists and said, how do we break this down into rubrics? Because we can measure the yo-yo test, the beep test. We can measure the how many push-ups somebody can do, or the 40-yard dash. But how do we measure and assess the soft skills? 2 things here. Number 1, we always allow the player to self-report. So it doesn't matter if we do this by an app, if you're using a content management tool or an app, or if you're using an Excel spreadsheet, or if you're using a piece of paper. It doesn't matter, but it does matter that it happens. So we broke it down into initial, emerging, and competent. Red, yellow, green. For example, Rugby Canada just basically breaks down all of their assessments: red, yellow, green. Red, can't do it. Emerging, it's not intentional, but it's hit and miss. Green, they have a good grasp of that skill set. So really, to keep it simple, you can see they're all defined there. And what we did was, next thing that we did with some of the organizations that we work with, is we actually broke down the 5 C's by age and stage of development. I'm personally a fan of doing it by stage, not age, because then it doesn't pigeonhole people in certain age groups. But again, these are just guardrails. So I'll show you what that looks like in terms of the PGA. Essentially, if we're looking at, active start for at 5 years old, what is it that's important to us at 5 years old? What is it that we're looking for? We're looking for things like happiness, trying your best, or punctuality. And this goes back to the question that was asked earlier. Well, how do you break down and categorize this? As we move up in character, 7 and 8, we're looking for honesty, respect, and integrity. And all of these have been defined by the PGA. We only took 3. If you've been into the Canadian Athlete Development Matrix, there's about 276 of these qualifiers. It was just too much, and nobody was using anything. So we started with 3. If you're a coach or a TD or an ED, you can start with 1. You can start with 2. You don't have to use these. You could use your own. But when these are married with a technical tactical progression sheet, it's really powerful. You're really, really giving benefit and service to the consumer. So as we move up, we get more sophisticated. One of the conversations that we had with the Coaching Association of Canada was, why isn't there soft skills coaching and development for grassroots coaches? Why aren't we contextualizing the reasons for the decline of participation at the grassroots level of coaches? Why isn't that a module when we start? Because that's really the most important thing as a grassroots or volunteer coach. How do we connect with people? What are we looking for? How are we trying to help them build? And even if we went through this and had a lens of, hey, listen, at this level, it's all about showing up on time, trying your best, and making sure you're having fun or being happy. As we get to the more serious levels, play to compete, well, then we're talking about, ability to handle criticism, seeing setbacks as learning opportunities, and setting a strong sense of focus as we get into the play to compete by 15 years old. So you can see, just like the technical tactical skills would be walking up for individuals, so too do the soft skills and the 5 C's. I'm going to pause there. I'm pretty sure there's a lot of questions. If you're looking at this and going, there's no way in hell we could do this, we want to hear about it. We want to hear how we can make it easier for you and simplify this process. We also want to hear everything. So Matt, if there's any questions, or Alex, if there's any questions in the box, or you guys have any questions or comments, please let me know. I'll just pause.
Perfect, Matt. So we had one earlier from Billy, and he was asking, if we accept that development is really non-linear, what exactly would we be evaluating and how? You've covered that a little bit, but if you can dive into that a little bit deeper.
Yeah, that's a great question, and the question is right. It is non-linear. This actually makes it individual. So when we're giving the individual player his or her report, it's individualized to them. And they should go through initial, emerging, and competent. Just like you don't show up day one and run like a professional sprinter, you're not going to show up day one and understand what honesty, respect, and integrity are. So it is the individual journey. It is nonlinear. You can pick and choose what you put in. Different players are going to need different things. So where someone is going to have to really work on their integrity, and it's defined there, so they're going to see the definition. They're going to self-report to you, initial, emerging, competent, where they think they are, and then you're going to be able to have that conversation if it needs to be had, and if it is a conversation at all. So I think the benefit of this is that it actually enables you to really focus on the areas that the players identify that are areas of improvement beyond just the technical tactical, and including the technical tactical and physical. And it allows both player and parent to see that there are other areas of sport, there are other areas of development, and there are other areas of focus. It's a great question. Any other questions or comments on that?
None coming through at this time, Matt.
Perfect. All good. So let's go right to the outcome goals. We wanted to share the tenets of what quality sport experience is. We want to explore player-centric development, and we want to define the 5 C's in activation. We wanted to keep this really short because we wanted to answer more questions than speak. So now is a time for either the Ontario soccer team to make comments and questions, or anyone that's on the call, if they have any questions in and around kind of reframing success and reframing development and introducing the 5 C's. And I would ask people to put into the chat, if they could, what was one thing that stood out or they took away. And it can be positive, it can be constructive, it can be anything. So just give you a minute to do that.
I'll kick you off with one, Matt, while we wait for the messages to come in. So from the organizations that you've worked with and the people you've spoken to, what's been the biggest stumbling block? What's been the hardest sell? What's been the item you've encountered the most resistance with, the most it can't be done?
Yeah, great question. So as you can imagine, the organizational alignment. So, and I think somebody already mentioned it at the outset. This is a tough ship to turn around in terms of clubs winning, because we are so ingrained in, I just want to be part of a winning club. And the winning is the standing, the score, and the schedule. And if that's going to be, there's always going to be, you know, great coaching, as Cody Royal pointed out, is not aggregating inferior or exceptional talent and kicking the crap out of inferior opponents. That's not the mark of a great coach or a great club. The mark of a great coach or great club is finishing the season better than you started across mutually agreed upon development criterion. Great coaches and clubs don't force players to believe in their systems. Great coaches and clubs help players believe in themselves. And there's a big, big difference. And for anyone that's out there, and anyone, not just on this call, that tells me, well, go, here we go, you know, you just don't, it's not about winning. You'll have way more victories. You'll have, by doing sport properly and by doing sport this way and adopting this, you will have way more personal satisfaction, professional satisfaction, personal growth, because you're not going to get a lot of pushback from parents when they see a report card like this that's helping their kid progress through not only the technical, tactical, and physical skills, but the soft skills, especially what's going on in today's world. So to get back to the question, the biggest pushback is going to come in tenet number 1, which is the organizational alignment. How committed is the organization to doing something like this, seeing it through, reimagining what player development is, and then executing? And again, as we start to see it happen through PGA as an example, Tennis Canada as another example, you're going to start to see the same things across multiple different sports. So we're not going to get away from it. Like you're going to see it. Good question. Any other questions?
A couple of comments. The technical director for FTSC saying we must place more value on player retention than player recruitment, and David Lowe following up, success in our 100% recreational program is when the children come back the following season. I don't know if you want to comment on that. There's a couple of questions after that. I let Matt read those out.
Yeah, I will comment on that 100%. And you know, coming back season after season, I just want to hit that, because a lot of times people have asked, hey, listen, is this something for, well, house league players don't need this. Well, why not? House league players, what if you ask them, what house league, what's your biggest pet peeve? Well, that just because I'm house league, I don't get opportunity to do a lot of the things the high performance players can do. No one's tracking me. No one's tracking my progress. I want to get better too. So I really like that comment, that yes, it's all about making sure that people come back, and that is the success of a great coach and great program. This will help that. And again, this is not just for the 1 to 2% elite. This is for the 95% as well. You can go into, we're just showing you a conceptual framework on reimagining development and the 5 C's. You can take from that and extrapolate what you want. If you only want to measure one thing per age and stage across each of the development criterion, start there. If you only want to do one criterion, if it's only character that you want to look at, start there. But just start somewhere, and that's exactly the message that John, step into the ring. That was my message. Step into the ring. That was Allison's message. Step up. Like we have to start small, and we have to start somewhere.
Thanks, Matt. We've got another one here just to follow up to the comment you made about, one of the previous questions, I should say, that talked about nonlinear development. So following up on that, simple to measure physical development parameters. They're standardized tests, sports science piece. It's easy to track and really monitor that, whether it's short term or long term. But looking at some of the other elements, especially around character specifically, how do you mitigate some of that subjectivity, especially if the player's with the club for a long period of time and they're transitioning between coaches, so the evaluative eye is different?
Yes, and it's going to be like that. And you're absolutely right. But right now we're doing nothing. So we're saying start doing something, and it's going to differ from coach to coach. But usually, unless there's a personal clash, usually from our coaching experience, I'm generalizing again. If you have a player that's a ham sandwich over here and they show up over there, they're likely going to be a ham sandwich, and the coach is going to sort that out. If you have a difference in opinion, again, the personality issues, if there's just not a personality mix, that's probably where you're going to get the variation. Well, one coach was able to connect with that person because he or she took the time to do something that would have been on the soft skills to find a way to make a connection, where another coach might have just written that person off. So yes, there's going to be some subjectivity, but over time is what you're looking at. And over time, just introducing those concepts to the players and parents, you'll be shocked at how much they take on. We don't give the players and parents enough credit for giving them the development data and then seeing how they use it. And I'll just give this example for that. We were asked to do a dryland training for an elite 10-year-old hockey team. And what we did was we did this baselining at the beginning of the season. We said, we're only doing it if you're going to baseline at the beginning of the season, if you're going to tell us what it is that you're looking for in terms of outcomes, if you're going to tell us where the players are and what you're seeing right now through the tryout phase and process in games, etc. So essentially, we measured the kids 1 hour on all physical fitness. So speed, strength, endurance, power, balance. We just picked drills. They all did the same drills. It doesn't matter what you do. It just matters that you do it the same the whole way through. So we did it at the beginning of the season, and then we reported back through Excel spreadsheet to the players and parents. And we just said, here is your result. Here was the team average, and here's the quartile you ranked on the team. Not the list of players, so they competed against each other. It was the first time every single parent, 17 out of 17 parents, phoned and asked, how does my son wants to know how he improves this metric? Holy smokes, this was amazing. We thought my son was great at everything. He's in the third or fourth quartile. What do we need to do? So I use that example because you'll be surprised at just how bought in people are when you give them something tangible to go around. If we don't give them something tangible to go around, again, they're defaulting to the schedule, the score, the lines, who played, why is that person playing? When they went on, we lost. Like they focus on other things. So give them the thing to focus on that we want them to focus on. So that's an answer to the one question. What was the beginning of that question again, Matt? The first one, the first piece?
The first piece was just around physical development being simpler to evaluate versus the character integrity, but I think you've covered that element. The second piece was across different coaches.
Yeah. So again, hopefully the journey as kids go up, and wouldn't it be great as a coach to see the kids that are coming up to you instead of just showing up, there's your team, and you don't know anything about this player, or and you're starting from zero, which tends to happen in our sport world. Wouldn't it be great to see a chronological development of that athlete in your club across their whole, and they get it, like they have this, just like you would for just like swimming does. Swimming does that. They have badges. You know exactly where you are. You go to the next spot. Skating does that as well. They do it well. So it's not a it's not like this isn't happening in sports. It's just that it hasn't happened in the sports of soccer, hockey, and some of the other sports, just because it just hasn't been the way we've done it before. Great question, and thanks for asking that question.
Thanks, Matt. One more here, just from your perspective, I guess to put you on the spot here for on Ontario soccer side, how do you see Ontario soccer as a PSO really helping to recreate or reshape this environment to make that cultural change that's needed?
Well, okay, so putting me on the spot. First of all, you can never mandate a culture that you're not living yourselves. So it's great to see the people that Ontario Soccer has put in place with development. And you didn't pay me to say that, but we've seen a lot of sports and a lot of organizations that tell people to do one thing and are unwilling to do it themselves or don't believe in it. So that's the first start, number one. Number two, it's helping the first followers, the people that cared to show up to listen to this or may listen to it on the recording, that say, yeah, you know what, I'm interested in learning more about that, and then supplying them with the systems. So again, I will say Ontario Soccer has been great to work with and open to working on this. We will continue to work on it with them together as long as we can provide value. There's lots of other people that are providing value to them as well. And I think it's about them, Ontario Soccer, providing the tools and resources to make this, what seems to be really complex, simple and easy to actually execute. And again, that is, how do we communicate it? How do we communicate to parents, coaches, athletes? I will say to this group, we've gone as far as co-creating with Ontario Soccer a 48-week periodized communication plan, because we already know what the pain points of the season are and what the important points of the season are. So, for example, week one, beginning with the end in mind, what does a successful season look like? We've developed a communication for coaches, and we've developed a communication for parents. So parents and players, because they're both kind of one consumer. So at week one, that communication goes out, hopefully through the support of Ontario Soccer, to the coaches and players, and they have that. Week two, managing placement and tryouts and placement. What do we do as a coach? What do we do as a parent? How do we prepare ourselves as an athlete? So we've started to prepare that and those systems, and I won't get too deep into it, but I think to answer that question, Ontario Soccer can continue doing what it's doing to support the growth of the game. And I want to go back to somebody's comment, which was a great comment of, this is a great time to be doing this as we head into 2026 and the state of both men's and women's team in Canada. It's a great time to get people after the pandemic, pick them up, show them that we care about them, whether they're there for fun, participation, to see their friends, to get to the next level, to join an academy, to work their way up the ODPL system in League One. It's a great time for this to start happening.
Thanks, Matt. Not seeing any other questions or comments. Last call for everyone. Really chime in with any others that you might have.
Do we have any takeaways? No takeaways?
Let me get everyone to the chat box here. None come through as of yet.
Perfect. Okay, so we'll wrap it up. We'll give you back 8 minutes of your time. Thanks so much. I know it's only 4 o'clock here, but I know it's 7 o'clock there, and really appreciate the opportunity to share some new concepts on how we reframe success and development in the sport of soccer. So thank you so much.
Thanks for joining us, Matt, and appreciate everyone who joined us today on tonight's call. Looking forward to getting this recording out there and really driving some of the tools that Matt's discussed through the stakeholder development calendar. Without any further ado as well, highlight that there is one more session currently scheduled within the Grassroots webinar series later this month in March. So look forward to seeing everyone there. You can find more information on that on our social media channels and website. Thanks again, and have a great night.
Bye.